The March 28, 2017 meeting of Methacton School District Board of School Directors is now called to order. Please rise for the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hello, my name is McKenna Comfort, and I'm a 7th grader at Arcola Intermediate School. This is Lena Kimball, who is an 8th grader, also at Arcola Intermediate School. Both Lena and I are part of a club called Student Congress, and we are here to share what we have accomplished so far this year, both inside and outside of Student Congress. To start off, Student Congress is where each homeroom picks a representative, and the representative comes to the Student Congress Club to plan events in the school. So far, we have had 2 pep rallies, each followed by a student versus faculty sporting event, a 7th grade and 8th grade dance, Hoops for Heart, Candy Canes Against Cancer, multiple spirit days, Mondays with Mangano, a food drive bucket in all 3 lunches, and multiple drives for different home items in each homeroom. These things I have listed have helped to make Arcola special. Now, for further explanation, the pep rally is an event where all the students come into the auditorium and get excited for the student-faculty basketball games and volleyball games. In the pep rally, we also showcase all the teachers and students playing in the games and all the athletes for that season's sports. The 7th and 8th grade dance was a huge success. We have had a professional DJ, colored lasers, everyone was dancing, and we made over $100 in snacks that we sold. All the students loved the dance, and the Student Congress is thinking about making another one. Another event that took place in Arcola is Hoops for Heart. This is where the students brought in money for the American Heart Association. Everyone who brought in money got to play in the student-faculty basketball game, and they raised over $2,000. In the support for the Arcola's Relay for Life team, we raised over $200 in selling candy canes. All the profits went to the American Cancer Society for support. Students could purchase these candy canes at their lunches and give them to someone else. We have also had many spirit days, such as Down Syndrome Awareness Crazy Sock Day, Team Color Day, where kids on the red team wear red, blue team wears blue, and white team wears white. The first day, Friday of every month, is School's Colors Day, where we wear white and green. These spirit days help the students in the Arcola community to get ready for the spirit of Methacton District. Mondays with Mangano is where Miss Mangano gets on the news journal and tells us a motivational message for us to get started for the week. These messages help kids to power through their week. Another event that has taken place is the food drive bucket. The bucket is put in all 3 lunches, and students can donate unopened food such as granola bars or juice boxes. All of the food is sent to a local charity. The last thing I will be addressing in this meeting is our drives held in Arcola. We have had drives for school supplies, toys, food, and paper products. These drives help the students feel involved and connected to their community. Arcola is special for both student body and staff. Lena, along with the whole Student Congress, are helping to make the little moments here at Arcola count. I hope you enjoyed hearing about what makes Arcola special. Thank you and have a good evening.
Both my kids are at Arcola. Let's go around to the front.
Well, part of the process of coming and speaking at the public meeting is your reward is to become junior school board member. So there's a lot of responsibilities that come with that. Are you ready for all those? Here you go. Thank you. Thank you for coming out.
Try to get Tara down here.
Thank you. Thanks again for coming out and talking about our Good job. All right, on to other things. I just want to warn everybody, I'm doing this without my reading glasses that I left at home, so I'm counting on the rest of the board to keep me on track. I think I can do it, but if I misspeak, I'm counting on everybody up here at the table to correct me. I appreciate that. By way, the next part is the announcements and executive sessions. The public is hereby advised of the audio and video recording of this meeting for the purpose of rebroadcasting. There's one executive session to talk about. The board held a executive session at the Farina Building on March 27th, 2017 for the purposes of discussions regarding contract negotiations with the Methacton Education Association and to address personnel matters associated with the closure of Audubon School and other building administrative, professional, and support positions. By way of attendance, we have all the board members here tonight, and then we'll move on excuse me, to the next section is recognition of guests and scheduled speakers.
This evening, members of the board and public, it's a pleasure to introduce Mr. Savitz and the Electric Car Club presentation. Mr. Boardman, you might have a few words before that?
I do. Living right behind the high school over on Marybrook Road, I've seen this green, quiet car drive by my house for years, and I had a feeling it was the Electric Car Club, but I wasn't sure. And now before the meeting tonight, we had a meeting with the car club where they explained all the processes to us and the mobile teaching truck they have, and it's all impressive, and it's really the state-of-the-art technology, and it's really refreshing to see some of our Methacton students being passionate about things like that. So it was very interesting and exciting, and as I told them, I wish I could go get my tools and start tearing stuff apart to see how it was put together, but I couldn't guarantee I could put it back together. So thanks for that, and we look forward to the presentation for the whole public now.
If I could ask the board members to take their seats in the front row, we'll start the presentation. Thank you.
We're plugged in? Yeah, turn the projector. Is there audio in there? There we go. I don't know. That's fine. Good? Yeah, there it is. Hello, my name is Bryce Merrill. I am the co-president of the Electric Car Club here at Methacton. This is our club website where we kind of display some of the different events we go to, what we're working on, kind of current projects for us. And if you scroll down, we can see our biggest accomplishment this year so far is we went to the Philadelphia Auto Show. We were invited to go and bring both of our vehicles. So you see the bottom one here is the Lorax, which was donated to the school by John Murphy in 2002. So we've been kind of working on that for a while. It's a complete electric vehicle, and then behind it is our most recently completed project. We started about 6 years ago, and it started life as a tasty cake truck. And then students at Methacton kind of went through, cleaned it out. We've converted to run vegetable oil, so like the waste vegetable from like a fast food restaurant, we'll use that instead of the diesel fuel. And then we went through and built all kinds of different displays to educate students and the public about renewable energy and alternative energies. So this is a really, really great event for us. We got to kind of showcase this to hundreds and hundreds of people at the auto show, and a lot of different alumni came by. We're very excited to see us represented there. And the really unique thing about the box truck not only is a classroom, but it's a mobile charging station for the car. On top of it, we have solar panels mounted, and then inside there's an inverter and a whole battery pack. So instead of having to go drive, say like 100 miles, 200 miles in your car and then recharge it at a charging station or come back home, we can actually travel with both vehicles and then charge it up and continue traveling whenever we stop anywhere.
You don't have audio. There's no sound.
There's no sound.
So this is a news footage that we have that was of us before we were making preparations to go to the auto show. We don't have audio in the computer, so we might just like hold the microphone up to it, if that'll work. Should I get it out? Okay.
Some very smart students are about to big time. Members of the club and the faculty are going to show off their sustainable energy vehicles at the Philadelphia Auto Show. Action News reporter Bob Brooks got a preview look today.
This truck runs on vegetable oil and this car on electricity. They're both going to be on display at the auto show, and they're both assembled by the bright students at the Methacton High School Electric Car Club.
So you have the sun powering houses through solar panels.
Inside the former Tasty Cake truck, it's more educational than most classrooms. Though running on vegetable oil, it smells a little like
Fries.
Club members like Bryce Merrill and Amanda Amornache have loaded it up with displays on renewable energy, and one of them is a race car track.
If you stick the window out and the door will be open, the car will move around the racetrack.
They even wired up a stationary bike to show you how much energy each light bulb needs.
So the first one is a LED light bulb, and then you pedal harder, you get the CFL to come on. And you pedal even harder, and you get the halogen bulb to come on. And then you get it really, really hard to get the incandescent to come on.
Their car looks like a classic, but when you turn it on, it's built with an engine of the future. Building and always trying to improve these vehicles of tomorrow has taught these students all kinds of skills.
I came into the club not really knowing anything about any of this, so I learned a lot just about like the way batteries work, but also the way that sustainable energy works.
So I really enjoyed my time working with them, and that's definitely where the industry's starting to go. We're moving away from gasoline, more into electric cars, so I really want to pursue that in college.
And now they're ready to show you all at the auto show what they can do. Now don't forget the Methacton Electric Car Club is going to be at the auto show the entire time, so please check out all this great stuff they have. And now Amanda's going to take me for a little ride in their wonderful car here. Let's do it. See you guys. Bob Brooks, Channel 6, Action News.
Yeah, and that bike display you saw, Dr. Zerby just did that, so you guys can look to Twitter. But actually, the auto show was a really great experience for us, just because we worked very hard in this club to really like get all of our vehicles working and all these displays. And it was really the first time we got to bring the box truck anywhere and show it off. And there were upwards of there were thousands of people there that went through and saw it. And people came by. There was a little boy who came by and he was like, "Were you in the car with Bob Brooks?" And I didn't know how to respond to that. He took a selfie with me. I was confused. And then we had tons of people. It really got the word out about our club and our mission, but it also got the word out about Methacton. On the top of our truck, it says Methacton Electric and then Car Club at the bottom. So people saw the word Methacton, and we had people coming from across the floor and saying, "Oh, we saw Methacton across the floor. We had to come see what it was about." And people graduated. Somebody came by and he was the first graduating class of Methacton, and he came by and stopped and said hi to us, and we were just amazed by that. And then people who we knew who graduated 2 years ago and are going to Drexel, they also came by. It was just a whole different array of people. And while we're on the topic of alumni, this club really does influence a lot of us into what we're doing in our futures. These two students, this is Karthik Palutla and Ben Sattler. This news article about them is when they came by and they were in Mr. Savitz's class actually, and a couple other classes around the area, teaching kids about renewable energy, how motors work, electrical energy, and showing off their Chevy Malibu that they built at the Penn State hybrid lab. These two boys, they're engineers and they're going to graduate this year from Penn State. Karthik is going into engineering. They're both going to engineering. Karthik is going to work at Ford for an electric vehicle department, so he's doing what he's been doing this whole time. And Ben Sattler is going to work at SpaceX, so that's a little shift, but hey, it's an upgrade. And in terms of what we're doing, we actually have 3 graduating seniors this year. Myself, I'm going into materials engineering, and this club has a lot to do with that. Bryce, where are you going?
I'm going into mechanical engineering.
And Jarrett?
I was going into electrical engineering.
So I think that says a lot about what this club does for the students. Who's next? Oh, and here's a school board video we made for you. need the music for this.
So that was a video of us up at Penn State 2 years ago, competing with our car, the Lorax. It's an annual competition up at Penn State every year, and then last year it was actually held at the Navy Yard. But it's scheduled again for up at Penn State this year. And it's a really great event for us because it's not about how fast your car is or how great your car is. As you can see, there's a lot of different events encompassed in this competition. So it's more of a practicality competition. How practical is your car at like going around and driving around town? How practical is it like carrying people, carrying stuff around? So every year we place in the top 3 in our class, and it really gives us a good motivation every year to kind of push our car to be the most efficient and the best it can be.
All right, good evening. My name is Anurag Nadkarni, and I'll be talking about some of the goals that we have for this year. And I wanted to start off with what we've accomplished in the past year or so. And as you can see, these are all the accomplishments that we've made for our box truck and the electric car. And you can see that a lot of this is our renovating the box truck to make it more friendly and make it more a comforting environment, as well as adding in and updating a lot of the displays that we had that you saw in the video of ABC News. And we also have some of our donations and our fundraisers that without which we would not be able to afford any of the updates that we have made to our vehicles, including the lip sync competition, which we actually held a few weeks back. And none of this would actually be possible without the unique skill set of all the people that we have in our club, because they're the ones that get this accomplished. They're the ones that make it to the meetings and plan this and follow through with it.
So these are our current projects we're working on. The Lorax and the box truck are pretty much complete at this point. We're kind of finishing them up, but what we're working on for the rest of this school year and kind of into future school years, the major one is the truck here on the left. It's a yellow Ford Ranger that was converted to run on electricity by a school up in Maine, and then they've since donated to Methacton. And last spring we actually installed a whole new battery pack in that truck, and then throughout this year and kind of future years, we're going through and kind of learning exactly how it works, kind of what the system's like in there, and optimizing it. We're really hoping to be able to break 100 miles with this truck at our competition in the future. And then these two pictures on the right are kind of some of our future hopes and projects. The top is an example of electric bicycle, and we actually acquired a bicycle from Bike Sport recently, and we're in the process of converting it to run electricity with the hopes that at competition and stuff, we always get students asking, interested in driving the car or riding the car, and they're both street legal vehicles, so we can't have them drive them or anything, and usually it's a very congested, kind of crowded area, so we can't really give them rides or anything like that. But our hopes is that they can get on the bike and ride the bike and really experience electric power and kind of what that means, and instead of having like an engine strapped to it, experience like quiet, just like whirring around and stuff. And then the bottom is electric longboard, and it's the same idea. We're hoping to acquire funding in the future for that, so that between the two, we can have students running around and riding around and having a good time at different events and stuff.
Hi, my name is William Gullion. This is our club. It really focuses on, we have our cars, but we focus on education a lot, and we do that by traveling to different events. So Amanda mentioned the Philadelphia Auto Show, and we also go to our Carlos Steam Day each year to show off our cars to the middle schools. And this is a list of all the events that we have gone to this year and are going to later in the year.
Hello, my name is Satvik, and these are some of the different events we've been going to for the past year. To my far left is the one we did recently. In fact, we did this on Saturday. It was me, Anurag, and Mike. We went to the Montgomery County Community College, and we had this set up at the Discover Your Future camp. And what we did was we try to educate and try to create interest in young women in the STEM fields. We did that by having them create electric cars out of Legos. And as you can see, there's one successful car that we had that was like very stellar. And we also focus on a broad range of ages. So as you can see, at the elementary school, we're educating some of the younger kids. And at Temple University, we're also educating some kids, and we also get some older people who are interested in learning about the environment and the electric cars.
And it's time for thank yous. It can't be done without a lot of people. You can see on the left-hand side, these are our sponsors. The Education Foundation of Acton Community has really been an integral part of helping us find funding for these projects. And all the way down through Real Random, which is a company that someone knew someone in Florida that actually flew into the auto show to watch and get a preview of what we do. So it was kind of neat for them to come in. SunPower Builders, which I'll talk about, Ambler Savings, Engineering, so you can just see it. Then there's also smaller people that didn't want to be noticed, like Home Depot donated a carpet. We had a student from the Votech School, Dominic Simini, who knew about carpeting, so we solicited his expertise, and he helped us install the carpet with his father, because that was above our wheelhouse, how to do that and make it look nice. And then the right-hand side are the integral people. I just want to take a second and thanks. John Murphy, who's here, he donated the car, as stated earlier, in 2002. We wouldn't have a program without him. He also came in once a week and gave us his expertise and just kind of showed us about alternative energy. Just can't thank him enough. Brian, it's because of John now we have 3 vehicles, though. So Brian Flanagan is also here in the back. He was one of them. He was a student of mine, and then he went to school, become a mechanic. He is now a full-fledged mechanic and a lifetime consultant, and he is here all the time helping us out and brainstorming and trying to think about new solutions. So I just want to really thank Brian. Roger and Leanne, I don't know if Ambler Savings is here, but with the help of the Education Foundation, they hooked us up with Ambler Savings, and they gave us a $10,000 grant, and that was put towards the box truck, and all the variables inside needed to be purchased. So it's an expensive hobby, and that was really well needed. So thank you for Ambler Savings. John Costanza, I don't know if John's here, but John's from Sun Power Builders, and he helped the kids to install the solar panels you see on the garage, because we wanted to charge the car through the sun and not through nuclear power. And then I remember sitting down with John in his office and saying, John, I have this idea about this box truck, charge the cars, classroom, what do you think? And then, he drew it on a piece of paper, and then we just kind of went back and forth, and through his help and guidance, we couldn't have built the inside of the truck without him, and powering the car and the displays inside with the solar panels. That was all through his help and expertise. So Sun Power Builders has been an integral part. And Jay Reese, I don't know if Jay's here. They were all invited. I know everyone's busy. But Jay Reese from Reese Engineering in Collegeville, he is an electrical engineer, and when we have to replace the batteries in the vehicles, we need some expertise in that area. I know my limitations, and I know when people really know what they're doing, that's the way to go. And Jay has helped us replace batteries in 2 of our vehicles. I want to say at least 75 hours of donating his time on Saturdays and Sundays to help us do that. And so these people on the right-hand side, we couldn't have a club without them, so I just wanted to thank them. And then last, because I know you want to move on, the seniors that are graduating. My only wish is that they weren't graduating. They are unbelievable, and the time that they put in, even though we meet some Saturdays, we meet Thursdays at 2:30. It's Thursday and it's Saturdays and Sundays, and it's every other minute that they have, and it's just the amount of time they put in is just remarkable. So those 3 are just going to be really missed. And that's the club. We just wanted to share with you what we do, and appreciate your time. Thank you.
So the one takeaway I got from this is, in order to support the club, we should all eat more French fries, just to provide you guys. And if you ever upgrade the Tasty Cake truck and you need help cleaning out the new truck, call me. I can. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And next on our list of recognition of guests and scheduled speakers, we have Ms. Gorla with a school transition update. Ms. Gorla?
Hi, everyone. You're going to get used to seeing me each month, giving you a little bit of an update of what's been going on with transition. For the past few weeks, I've been pretty busy with meeting with a lot of different groups of people, and I've been communicating with everyone I've met with about how my role in the transition process is really the person who is going to coordinate all of the different moving pieces in the project while keeping the needs of our students, our staff, and families at the forefront. So I've expanded on the general task timeline that Dr. Zerbe has laid out previously, and my intent each month is to provide all of you with an overview of what's been accomplished, as well as to elaborate on focus areas for the next 3 weeks. A summary of some things that have been going on that are completed or in progress. As I stated, I've been attending a variety of gatherings of people, from Audubon Home and School meetings, meetings with the Woodland Home and School Executive Board, attendance at the Methacton Coordinating Council, meetings with principals, gatherings gathering input from staff, meetings with district office members, really trying to seek to first understand everyone's concerns in every aspect so that I could get kind of where everyone is emotionally and logically so that I could start to really map out tasks and plan in separate areas. I've held preliminary meetings with Mark Fretz, he's our Director of Facilities, regarding planning for moves and projects. I've been working very closely with Angela on our frequently asked question responses and the development of district communications related to transition. Our staff has been informed of the process that will be used to determine demotions, furloughs, and reassignment. I've given communication to our district staff regarding a progress update, the use of our intranet page, which is used as a reference site for staff. I'm also continuing to seek input from staff as well as parents and students, and I'm beginning my work with such larger areas as the library. As you can imagine, when you talk about moving, there's different areas and there's different things to look at. I've been available to the Audubon staff in particular to field questions and concerns that they're having, and I view myself as kind of the person who can get them the information that's on their mind to help them, because really their focus right now is on the business of teaching our students. So I'm the person to help them get answers to those pressing questions. I also want you all to know that Bus Boss has conducted a cursory review of the approved boundaries, and they have indicated that there are no substantial issues. They've indicated that several stops and turns may require further review as they progress forward with their work, and they also shared that that we will likely need to operate a few additional elementary runs, but that no additional buses are needed. The transportation process is quite an in-depth process that I'm being pulled in on at this point. It's a very serious, very big undertaking. So they're really making progress and sticking with their timeline that they've communicated with us, and that's important to, I think, all of us to make sure that runs smoothly. Our focus areas for the next 3 weeks, I'm going to break these into some major categories. The first one is programming. This involves looking at the enrollment in each of our remaining 4 buildings for next year and determining the number of classes at each grade level, as well as special education and support services for students in each of our buildings. This process is the key to really everything else. As we continue planning in the areas of staffing, in the areas of facilities modifications, and the actual physical movement of materials. So our target completion for the programming portion is quick. By Monday, April 3rd is our target for, let's look at this and this is what it's going to look like, because that's the first in the domino effect of things. Which leads me to facilities and projects. Based on our intended programming for 2017-2018, we're reviewing building maps and looking at classroom assignments within buildings. That means, like, where will second grade be located? Where will first grade be located? I'll be meeting with Mark Fretz again regarding any projects that need to be completed in the remaining elementary buildings. He then will be responsible for compiling a timeline for completion of any projects, again, because we need to be ready to start school in September and ready for our staff to move in and be ready to receive students. Communication with the principals is very essential throughout this whole process, and they've been wonderful. I've held them captive on a couple of occasions, but it's important that we're all on the same page and we're all looking at the same information, and sometimes that really does need to go on in the same room. The next category is transition event planning. We need to plan and schedule events to help our students, family, and our staff transition to their schools for 2017-18. So that's really where we've been doing a lot of input gathering at this time to see what kind of events are important. We've done meetings with home and school representatives, and in fact have a meeting. Angela and I will be meeting tomorrow with representatives from MCC as well as our home and school associations to talk further about this. We're looking to share dates for key events in our very first family newsletter, which will be out at the end of this week. I'm a believer that it's good for people to have those dates on their calendars just for sanity and your family planning purposes. So in addition to helping the community transition to new schools, our plans also have to be made for closing out the school year. Principals are engaged with this along with home and school associations, but we recognize that planning events surrounding the end of the year involves the input of a lot, but particularly with the closing of Audubon Elementary School. We need to pay special attention to that, and we plan on using a committee approach to planning activities surrounding that closing of Audubon. There's a couple of things that you'll see me repeat as I stand up here, and this last one's really the big one, and that's communication. Communication is just the ongoing process, and it's finding that right amount of communication. I know that if I email my staff too much at Skyview, they start to ignore me. Or they read like the first line and then they're like, she'll come around and she'll tell us what we need to know. So we've decided to take the approach of biweekly, because we think then we can provide information that parents need or staff needs or can use. So like I had said before, the intranet page is being established for our staff. That's the internal communication page where staff can always find information, whatever's sent out in email, whatever's posted. It's all going to be housed there for historical data. The transition portion of the district website will continue to be used to highlight information, serve as a reference for families, and again, anything that's sent out in an email or an e-newsletter will all be on that page, so that if you can't find that email that you know the district set, you know that it will be right there. Angela and I will be working in the coming weeks to organize the frequently asked questions section into categories, again, just to look to make that more readily accessible. The newsletters that will start this week will be an electronic newsletter, easy to view on your phone, and again, also posted on our actual website as well. These newsletters are going to offer information that families can use, ranging from transition events that are going on, dates for your calendar, to giving them a snapshot of what we're doing in the next few weeks to prepare for the transition, as well as really practical resources, such as talking with your children about transitioning to a new school. So that is where we are at now. It's a lot of different things to worry about, but again, our concern is really primarily preparing our children and our staff and our families to be comfortable and ready for the start of the 17-18 school year.
Are there any questions at this point for Ms. Gorla? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for your enthusiasm, because certainly the attitude is helpful. I just want to highlight, if there's any bottlenecks in this process, highly encourage raising the flag as quickly as possible to Dr. Zerbia and to the board, so that we can get in front of it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, thank you, Ms. Gorla. Next on our list of guests and scheduled speakers, we have the home and school presentation by Arcola Intermediate School.
Hello. Hi, I'm Liz Drummond. I'm co-president at Arcola Home and School. This is Ashley Wilkerson. She's our corresponding secretary. Home and School at the Arcola level is a little bit quieter than at the elementary level, I'm finding out. But we still have done many things and made many contributions financially and in terms of activities that I'd like to highlight. One is we have established the Box Top fundraising and Giant fundraising through Giant Food Stores, and that has generated almost $600 for the school this year. We have made a variety of mini grants that really cover a whole breadth of experiences. We contribute up to $500 to pay the registration fee for students who qualify for the National History Bee in Atlanta. Last year, 7 qualified and 5 attended. We don't have those numbers yet this year. We have provided desktop microphones to the Spanish teachers so that kids can start to practice in their target language. We have supplied almost $500 for the Veterans Day program, and what we did was we supplied stone and timbers, and we refurbished the area around and in front of the Arcola flagpole. We provided a Cremona violin pickup for the music program, which makes violins sound like electric violins, which is a different kind of music to try. We provided money for the ESL classrooms to create a cozy reading area for them. And we provided 4 Spiro Sparks to the 7th and 8th grade coding club, 7th grade pre-algebra, in order to practice coding skills with robotics. And we also supply yearbooks for families in need so that they can enjoy the yearbook too. In addition, we have brought back activity nights to Arcola. We hosted a movie night. We have an upcoming gym night, open gym night. We are looking at maybe an end-of-year event at Arcola. We helped provide funds and volunteer support for the recent Arcola dance that was run by the Student Congress, but we helped with refreshments and volunteer support for that. And upcoming, we have our 8th grade social, which is a big event for the 8th graders, like a semi-formal dance, and they get photographed and they have a great time. We have an upcoming staff appreciation luncheon, and we are providing support for STEAM Day, where I'm excited to see the electric cars are going to be. We also provide support for an upcoming 5K, which is going to this year support Small Steps in Speech, which is to help children with speech and/or language disorders. And probably my favorite thing we've done so far this year is we have sponsored the laser shows at the planetarium, which have brought in, we bookend the weekends, but that apparently brought in 450 people to our amazing planetarium over the week. And every school was represented, the community came out to see it. We are looking into making it a recurring event. They have Halloween shows, they have holiday shows. We're even talking about maybe purchasing the equipment. And we believe that that really helped reintroduce the planetarium to the community. As a result, the monthly show boasted their first sellout, the regular monthly show. So we think it worked to really raise awareness of that asset to the district. So that is my presentation on Arcola Home and School.
I want to say, if I could, Ms. Drummond and Ms. Wilkerson, thank you so much for being a partner with the education at several schools, but specifically tonight here at Arcola. By all means, that's quite a bit of contribution that the parents of this community have made to the students and the programs at Arcola, and we just want to say thank you for all the work that you've done.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
We have reports. And moving on to the next portion of the meeting will be the reports. First up is the Finance Committee, Mr. Ryan.
I was unable to attend this month's finance meeting due to a personal matter, so Mr. Winters will be giving the report this evening.
Yes, the meeting adjourned started at 6:30, and in attendance were all except Mr. Ryan. We went through the list of bills with several questions, the treasurer's report, budgetary transfers, no questions were asked, and it talked about expenditure and revenue reports, looking for an increased understanding of variances throughout the year and the transparency of those. The major topic discussed was the budget update. Dr. Zerby went through the budget presentation with some changes that had been requested from the board related to the visibility specifically around staff costs. We also got sort of verbal updates around the changes that Dr. Zerby is looking at making related to the April finance meeting, and subjects included capital borrowing, ELA costing if approved, state subsidies, transportation subsidies, staff furloughs, second look at the insurance for both medical and prescription. There was some discussion about what to put in from a budget perspective as we get different information from the consortium. Property casualty, county assessment updates, taxes paid under protest, dental rates, etc. Also, there was discussion about the RFI for the auditors, with the discussion around the recommendation of a postponement for 1 year from Dr. Zerby, from Mr. McCall. There was a fund balance update and information related to the MCIU membership services budget, which had no significant changes to the MSD Methacton's budget. Coming forward, a quick update on the director search for Director of Business Services, and also gave an update on the healthcare projections. There was two courtesies of floor, Mr. Earnshaw and Mr. Bickelman, both talked related to a couple subjects related to the fund balance audit and how the recommendations on how to budget, and also how to handle some of the healthcare projection elements. The meeting adjourned at 8:30.
All right, thank you. And now on to the Property Committee, Mr. Dorn.
Yeah, I was out of town for a business trip, so Mr. Roth ran the meeting and will present the minutes.
Good evening. The Property Committee did convene a meeting on March 13th at 6:30 p.m. In attendance was myself, Kim Dr. Zerby, Mark Fretz, Dan and James from Fidivia. Basically, as in the minutes that are posted along with this agenda, the first topic would cover an update and timeline for the remaining stormwater management issues from the field project. The schedule was pushed off 2 weeks due to other commitments by the company that's going to be helping us with that. So the anticipated start date would be this coming Monday, I guess, or not this Monday, but April 3rd, and that should not affect any problems of getting it finished on time. Next, we talked about the capital projects and professional services presentation by Fidivia. Here they're basically going to take a tour of the facilities. They have done that. Develop a master schedule, analyze the needs based on the schedule. They're going to look at the dollars and come up with a comprehensive plan based on our immediate needs. Also, we're going to make sure that the elementary schools are going to be focused with those dollars and seeing how much of those needs at the elementary schools are going to really be focused on, and see if we can prioritize them a little bit. The other thing we talked about too was the varsity girls softball field update. As many of you may notice, the tarps are still on the field, which was good given the weather issues we've had. I don't know if between now and our meeting was in the middle of March. I don't know the condition and the growth, see what the progress is of that field, but I know the tarps are still on there. At least they were as of the other day. The plan was to peel them back at the end of the month and peel the blankets back and see where we are with that. Mark Fretz also presented to the Property Committee the Arcola Fields improvement proposal that was done, and back in looking into this from October of 2016. There's basically was a huge proposal, total turf renovation proposal, looking specifically at 2 fields. But the cost of it was astronomical. It's going to cost a small fortune. But those fields have been a problem ever since the Skyview building was built. It's nothing that has just creeped up. It's been going on and on. So the idea will be to figure a way to build the renovation of these fields into the capital plan. So we're going to work on that. It was noted also by Mr. Fretz that at the auxiliary field there was a depression found in the southwest corner. Our contractors was contacted and would get back to us with a fix, which basically means lifting the carpet, repairing the base, and reapplying the turf in that one section. And then lastly, we covered a little bit about the Arcola Access Road and some ideas about using that. So that's basically the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you. And now on to the Education Committee, Ms. Reese.
We met on March 6th. The meeting began at 6:30. The entire committee was in attendance. First on the discussion was textbooks for review. So what we will be approving tonight is that they will be put out for display, and the final approval is in April. There's 3 different textbooks: the K-5 ELA resources, Algebra 1, and an Honors English. A little background, start from the bottom. Honors English is a new course that they will be offering for the next school year. The Algebra 1 resources continue the progression of new math resources. 5-6 has been added. K to 4 has been added, and now the algebra for 8th and 9th. And the K to 5 ELA resources, it is the program, it is Wonders that has been chosen, and they are already out for display, I believe. There's been a long discussion and a lot of thought put into this, and I really appreciate Dr. Katona's work with that. I appreciate the teachers' work with that, because they had to look at several resources and see what was best. The long and short of it is Storytown is outdated due to many factors, including time and Common Core. There was concern that the teachers just implemented the math, but we have a fantastic staff, and the administration's going to work hard to make sure they're given everything, including time and the professional development needed to go ahead and do what's best for the kids. As an English teacher, I'm very passionate about this, so I'll be quiet, but I'm thrilled with the choice, and I hope that in April we can move on with this. It's a balanced literacy program, and there was a good question brought up at the work session from Mr. Ryan that talked about why can't we just supplement what we already have. And I kind of more related it to trying to fit a round peg into a square, or a square peg into a round. It doesn't work. And if for some reason the state throws more different things at us, this balanced literacy should cover what we need it to cover. It isn't just to make sure the kids can do well on the PSSA. It's to make sure they're receiving balanced literacy, which is a reading, writing, listening, speaking approach. So I am happy as Education Committee Chair to bring that to the board. And thank you again to everyone who helped come to that decision, because it's an expensive undertaking, and a lot of thought went into it. Next on the list was full-day kindergarten options, and we are at the beginning stages. The discussion was centered around what we need to do to add some form of full-day kindergarten. It has been discussed at earlier meetings that we're not going across the board, but we really need to look at some options, and there's a lot of homework that has to be done before that. There are several factors that need to be discussed, with the most prevalent being how to identify students for a targeted program, and which school or schools will have the space needed. This discussion and planning will continue into the spring and fall. There's no promises being made, but I hope that in 2018-19 we can have some form of full-day kindergarten. Next on the list was just a strategic plan update. This wonderful strategic plan we put together with the community's help, and we focused on this meeting on areas 1 and 3. One discussion was about the whole child. The district has been busy identifying support and interventions, evaluating the schools based on the 5 tenets. Health, safety, engagement, support, and challenge in each of the building. And each building is going through this process using a rubric. Where do we need to do better? Where are we doing really well? What do we need to keep doing? There was also, as part of that, a professional development discussion, the survey that has been given to staff, the collaboration that's been going on, the Bright Bites survey, reviewing of the K-12 sequence, and the STEM and STEAM opportunities. As always, we went through the enrollment report. For courtesy of the floor, Ms. Aubrey Larsenis had some good questions about the ELA timeline, and a few about some K-4 safety concerns. The meeting adjourned at 8:40.
All right, thank you. Now moving on to the Policy Committee, Ms. Aubrey Larsenis.
Thank you. I apologize that the minutes are not attached to the agenda tonight. I was a little tardy in getting them in, but I do have them here, and they will be posted. The Policy Committee met on March 1st. The meeting called to order at 6:33. in attendance were myself, Mr. Ryan, and Dr. Zerby. Andrea Reese was absent that night. One of the topics that we're starting to delve into a little earlier this year than we have last year was the student handbooks. We are working at making the handbooks a little bit more uniform and user-friendly across all schools. To that end, we are taking the content in the handbooks and dividing it up by content area. And among the committee members, we are going to work through the content and communicate back and forth with building principals to get all of these handbooks on the same page, so to speak. We're hoping to begin some of that process in the April meeting. For policies previously discussed, we're looking at making some headway on our lesson plan policy. We're going to look at some sample policies provided to us by PSBA from other school districts so that we can start looking at any changes that we may make to ours. The class rank policy is still sitting out there as a policy that's been previously discussed. We'll review it again if and when the Education Committee decides it's necessary. We have a couple of other policies that we reviewed that were then moved to a first reading. You'll see them on the agenda here this evening. We had the policy on school volunteers was up for discussion. We had some questions and are moving that to the April meeting so we can continue that discussion. And under old and new business, we are hoping to sometime in the year ahead start exploring the need for a policy to protect transgendered students and staff. I'm working with Dr. Engstadt to see if we can develop some sort of a policy to that end. During courtesy of the floor, there was no one present, and the meeting adjourned at 8:07.
Thank you. Now on to the intermediate unit, Ms. Hackett.
The intermediate unit considered many contracts and budgets. The first one was our Head Start budget, which was increased this current year. We also approved supply bids for art supplies, custodial, general medical supplies, copy paper, also fuel bids, and also a fixed rate discount set of bids for school districts. All of these are for school districts. There was a contract for online driver's training theory course, which students can apply to online. There was a contract with Methacton School District for Power School implementation and support. Contracts for teachers for the IU's AP Summer Institute. We also accepted the resignation of the Director of Patent, the Pennsylvania Training and Technical Assistance Program, who has been appointed to a position with the Department of Education in Harrisburg. So we were very pleased for her success. We're sorry to see her go, but we accepted that resignation. And we appointed Fox Rothschild as the solicitor for 1 year, ending June 30th, 2018, at no change in fee. We had a significant report from the Government Affairs Department. They talked about the many cases that there currently are concerning transgender students being approached from several different avenues throughout the country. We heard about the budget proposal, the federal budget proposal, which has a 13.5% cut in it for the Department of Education. So that could have an impact on us. ESSA regulations have been modified, and that has created some confusion because it was easy, I guess, when the federal government gave the guidelines and all the states followed them. Now the states are kind of on their own to make sure that they know what regulations are going to be enforced. There was a surplus of $118.4 million in the legislature's own budget. We have a big deficit, but there is a surplus in that budget. There's an increase to the EITC program proposed in the current budget, and there's a continuation of the moratorium on the Keystone exams, and unfortunately, there is no current work on the deficit in Peasers. It's the end of my report.
Thank you. And now on to the North Monco Technical Career Center.
Mr. Roth and I attended on March 20th. I'm always amazed at the success of these students, and I'm trying to bring it to the forefront. And it was interesting with the car company here today. There were 2 students that were that presented to us. They are going to a national. They won a regional competition, so they're going to a national competition in automotive technicians, and they have already won, correct me if I'm wrong, a full scholarship to a technical school. And I brought this to everyone's attention last month. Some of the things they're doing there are fantastic, and a lot of children are graduating from this technical school with jobs right away. And the success of the students at North Monco has been really incredible in these skills competitions. So those 2 students were recognized at our meeting. We also had a budget presentation. We will be approving that budget, or should be approving that budget at the April meeting. There were no surprises. They did a great job, no increases. If Herb, correct me if I'm wrong, because I cleaned out my school board folder tonight, and in that was the exact budget proposal, but I do remember that because everybody sighed with a big relief. Everyone had a big sigh of relief in the room. The one budget conversation we did have is there's an opportunity there to make more money for the school based on driver's ed, and they have limited teachers that can teach driver's ed, and there was a whole long talk about that, so I'm sure we'll be hearing about that in the future.
Yeah, it has to go, pardon me for interrupting, but it has to go with the certification of those teachers and getting that process and going through that. And if they had the ability, I mean, there's plenty of demand for it, so.
You always learn something new at these meetings, I have to say. They're quite, they're great. And anyway, that was really it, and I will bring you the actual budget numbers next month.
Thank you. And now on to the student board.
Thank you. So March was a busy month for school events. Our 4th annual 8-hour-long mini-thon event raised $55,040.26, which will go toward medical care, financial and emotional support, and pediatric cancer research at the Hershey Hospital. Mr. Methacton, the Electric Car Club's lip sync contest, and the talent show all occurred earlier this month, and the film festival will take place this Friday. In other news, I also have, I think a lot of congratulations are in order. Congrats to a 6th grader, Mohit Dutta, and 7th grader Michael Willen for qualifying for the 2017 Pennsylvania National Geographic State B. Congrats to 6th grader Chinmay Bapat, who will represent the Montgomery and Bucks counties at the Scripps National Spelling Bee in Washington, D.C. this May. Congrats to the 15 high school students recognized as finalists in the National Merit Scholarship Competition. Only 1% of those who take the PSAT earn this prestigious title of finalist. And finally, congrats to Josh Liu, Alan Chen, Nick DeFilippis, and Abhi Shah for placing 2nd at the Millersville Math Competition.
A lot of great things going on. Thank you. Now on to communications.
I have a couple of events to share with you, and then one additional student accomplishment that I wanted to share with you as well. The Education Foundation for the Methacton community is sponsoring a world-class ensemble performance right here in the Methacton School District. The public is invited to attend a free performance of the Air Force Strings this Friday, March 31st at 7 p.m. in the auditorium at Arcola. The members of the Air Force Strings have been working in the classroom with our students as part of an EFMC grant written by Methacton Strings teacher Sharon Saul. The concert will include performances performances by both the Arcola Intermediate School Orchestra as well as the Penndale Middle School Orchestra from the North Penn School District. So we're looking forward to that. The annual Methacton High School Senior Art Expo will take place on April 28th, 29th, and 30th. This is the community's opportunity to see artwork by our talented seniors in a variety of mediums: paint, digital, sculpture, and more. And for many of our students, pieces that will be on display represent the culmination of months of work and their senior projects as well. So I have one more student accomplishment to share with you. Methacton High School junior Karthik Hignesh was recently selected to participate in the Research Science Institute's 6-week summer program held at MIT. Sponsored by the Center for Excellence in Education, Karthik is among only 50 students accepted for this prestigious MIT program nationally and 30 students across the world internationally. Karthik will live in the MIT dorms and attend lectures and classes given by distinguished professors and scientists, including several Nobel laureates. This will be followed by more than 4 weeks of intense graduate-level research with a professor and research scientists in Karthik's area of interest. He will conclude by demonstrating his work through a written academic paper and an oral presentation to his peers and a panel of judges. Thank you.
And Methacton has had one other student, Neil Maida, a graduate of about 2 years ago. Is that right? And he's now at Harvard. Is that accurate? Okay. So he's doing well, and I stay in touch with his parents, and I see his Facebook page every once in a while, so he seems like he's doing good.
Tara knows him very well.
And I will also say that you should have at your places a personalized card inviting you to the art show. I will recommend that you should take time out of your schedule to be there. This is pretty amazing, a display of talent among the district. It just goes to show that we have such a tremendous opportunity and community, as well as student talent, from being able to build cars, to compete in these competitions, and produce miracles of art that just astound you. So I recommend you attend that. And that's actually the end of my report. So I have no other comments.
All right. Moving on to the public comment for the board action items. Any public comment? Joe.
Joe Bickelman from Audubon. I'd like to speak to item 9E, which is a bank account for taxes paid under protest. The motion reads, approve the establishment of a bank account with Tompkins Vist Bank for the purpose of depositing funds resulting from taxes paid under protest. That's real estate taxes, recommended by the district auditors. I think the description should change. I think you should take away recommended by the district auditors and replace it with required by Act 71 of 2005. The law that's on the books for the taxing authorities within second class or second class A counties reads in Section 5, the taxing districts shall segregate 25% of the amount of the tax paid under protest in a separate account and may not expend any portion of any segregated amount unless the taxing districts petition the court alleging that the segregated amount is unjustly withheld. So, recommended by the district auditors, they're only 12 years late, and whoever was in charge of this before in the district, I think they're a little late with it too, because it is in Act 71 of 2005, and you can ask your lawyer about that. The next item I'd like to address is item 13D, which is the school calendar. Tuesday, May 30th, the day after Labor Day, is listed as an Act 80 day. I'm just thinking that it's better to change that to a regular school day, because I think, you're running an educational business, and if it was a regular school day, the students could have another full day with the teaching staff prior to finals coming up in June, and that critical time of year of reviewing studies and getting any questions answered about any of their subjects with the teachers on May 30th, rather than have a day off, and make Monday, June 12th, which is a 2-hour day, which has no educational benefit for the students, and make that the Act 80 day. I just think in running the educational system, you can have a more valuable day, the day after Labor Day, when the kids are in session with their teachers prior to the critical time of finals and things like that. So I just think it would be a better use of teacher time and student interaction with their teachers. Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? John?
Good evening. John Andrews, Lower Providence. With regard to the item on the agenda about the new set of ELA books, the Wonders books, there was a comment made at I think at the Education Committee that those books have 5 levels of difficulty. And, that's not the way books were written when some of us older people were in the K-12 programs. So it seems to me that the determination to pick those books needs to be followed up with a determination as to what level of difficulty is going to be expected in the utilization of those books. I can understand the book publisher, if he has levels A, B, C, D, E of difficulty, the book can be used in the Chicago school system or the Lower Merion school system, and what gets taught might be quite different. So I think, Methacton has had a reputation of good academics, and we need to uphold that as we change from the Storytown set of books. The other thing is, and I mentioned this last week, on the list of bills, there was an item for the Keystone Realty Advisors, an item that in the list of bills that the public sees was identified as CVS assessment appraisal, with a sum of $65,000. Now, dug a little bit into that, and they have a contract with the school district, or at least they did. I'm not sure it's currently in effect, but their contract, given a successful reassessment that increases taxes, gives them 25% of that increase in each of 3 years. And so I tend to think that item, rather than being on the list of bills where part of the package is that we get increased revenues, maybe it should be considered as a fiscal matter and fully disclosed. The other item, I did some Googling, and for instance, in the Allentown School District, they have a contract with Keystone Advisors with a fixed term of 5 years. Now, in Methacton, I think the last reference in meeting agendas is from July of 2013, when the contract was modified to reduce their annual percentage from 30% to 25%. The other thing is that in the Upper Merion Township, the Keystone Realty was recommending a reassessment of various apartment buildings, and that resulted in I think a common pleas court case where the apartment owners didn't succeed. Then it went, I believe, to Commonwealth Court where they didn't succeed, and currently the case is at the state Supreme Court, where the apartment owners are contending that these reassessments violate the Constitution. I'm not a lawyer, I don't know what their chances are in their third try or whatever, but it's possible that some school districts such as Methacton would end up paying Keystone Advisors on the presumption that we'd get a tax increase on a property, and then the tax increase is nullified because of that Supreme Court decision, and then we don't get a refund from Keystone Advisors or Keystone Realty. So I think the CVS assessment appraisal is well worthy of some clarification to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, the first item up for us to vote on is approve the board meeting minutes for the special meeting held on February 21st and the board meeting held on February 28th. May I have a motion to approve? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Nope. All right, the motion passes. Now on to the fiscal items. Dr. Zerbe.
On the agenda for your approval this evening are several items under number 9, fiscal, the list of bills, treasurer's report, budgetary transfers, the MCIU membership services budget, bank account for taxes paid under protest, the MCIU compensation plan, student activity count, district management group proposal, and that concludes the items under fiscal. Are there any questions from the members of the board?
Nope. All right. May I have a motion to approve the list of bills, treasury report, and budgetary transfers? Second. Any discussion? All those, okay, go ahead, Scott.
Just, Dave, following up on what John said, can you, and I sent you a note on this the other day, can you shed some light on the Keystone contract, and if the payment to Keystone is after all appeals are exhausted?
Yeah, it's when the settlement is agreed upon, either through the process of court action or a settlement between the parties.
So it's after all appeals processes
exactly
are exhausted. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor? All right, that passes as well. Moving on now to the MCIU membership services. We have a motion to approve the budget for the services for the 2017-18 in the amount of $1,761,024 with the Methacton contribution in the amount of $74,740. This represents a decrease for Methacton of $2,673 from last year. May I have a motion to approve this? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, the motion passes. Now on to the next. This is related to the bank account, the MCIU compensation, the student activity account, and the district management group proposal. May I have a motion to approve the bank account for the taxes paid under protest, the MCIU compensation plan, student activity account, and the district management group proposal as presented? Second. Any discussion? Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, and Kyle, maybe you can shed some light on this. Is this required by law, as Mr. Bickelman talked to us? Because if it is, in fact, required by law, then I do agree that we ought to amend what this says. It could say recommended by district auditors and by law per Act 71 of 2005. I don't know what that Act 71 of 2005 is, but we ought to get it right.
My understanding is that it is a requirement. However, I would suggest that the language as proposed is adequate. The rationale for taking any sort of action is not necessary to be included as part of the agenda item. And so the fact that it is being proposed as action to be taken is satisfactory to comply with requirements of law.
Okay, and do we know why, since this was required by law, that it hadn't been done in the past? I mean, it's something I would question our auditors on as well. I mean, this is the first time I'm hearing that it was required by law.
I can tell you what I can tell you is that as soon as I got involved with the matter and dealing with it, we discovered that this needed to be done, and we took the proper action. Telling you why something happened 12 years ago and nothing changed, I can't tell you why that didn't occur then.
Okay, perhaps we can send something to our auditors asking why this hadn't been picked up in previous audit reports. I mean, that's a gap that certainly should have been picked up.
Thanks, Scott. Any other comment? You want to go, Jim?
Yes. Dave, annually, how many tax bills come in that they might write under protest on the check? And if so, how does the tax collector handle those checks? What's the procedure there?
At my time here at Methacton, I know of 2 taxpayers that have paid under protest, and now we have 1.
Okay, so is it brought to our attention from the tax collector and she doesn't put that into account, or she automatically would she have automatically put it into this account?
Yeah, I'm not certain that it's a function of the tax collector as much so a responsibility of the school district. I think the best suggestion is to talk to the auditors, find out, their stance on the matter about why it hasn't been determined to this degree previously, and I'll do that homework to find out. I think that's the best approach at this point.
Yeah, I would find it really interesting to see what the procedure is and how that's accounted, that if a resident that sent a check in under protest, that if they came back at a later date and asked for the accounting of that they would be able to see that their check was shown as in protest.
Yeah, I think there's not a question of the accounting on the matter of the taxes paid under protest. It's more of putting it in a separate account. So we do have a proper accounting for it, and we just don't have it in a separate account, which apparently it's required, and that's why we're making this recommendation.
I guess the question would be, is that account set up like an escrow account where you would have a list of people that have their money in that account? That's, putting money in there is one thing, but the accounting of that account, of where it came from, I think is equally important.
Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor? All right, motion passes, thank you. Now we're moving on, on to personnel items. Dr. Harney.
Yes, we have 1 resignation classified for your approval this evening. We have 1 employment classified. We have 1 change of status classified, 1 compensated leave professional, 1 uncompensated leave professional, 2 uncompensated leave classifieds. We have 7 supplemental contracts for your approval this evening, And I believe Mr. Dorn had a question about the extended season pay, and if any of the seasons that may have automatic bids to some sort of playoff system were factored into that extended season pay. And the only one of those that we have really is wrestling, that has a championship, but that's built into the season as far as that coach is concerned. So all of the extended season pay, as it was explained to me, starts when somebody has had to qualify for postseason. So there was no one getting paid for any automatic extra seasons, such as the wrestling team has with their Wrestling League championships. One note, next year, I was told that swimming is also going to have a league championship, but that, again, will not be factored into the extended season pay for that coach.
So it's just post-league championship, we can use the wrestling one because I'm pretty familiar with that format. So districts, regionals, states would qualify for the extra pay.
Correct, and even just the regular playoffs, I was told that most of the teams just go with the Final Four. So if you haven't qualified for it, not every team, all the other equations that were set up to pay those folks all started with the first practice after they have qualified for some postseason.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
And we also have the list of volunteers as attached.
May I have a motion to approve all the personnel items? Second. Any discussion? More discussion?
I had a question.
Sure.
Dr. Harney, sorry I didn't ask this at the work session. I missed it. The compensated leave professional, which is a sabbatical, can you explain to me how the sabbaticals work here at Methacton?
Sure. There's actually two types of sabbaticals. There's a health restoration sabbatical and a professional development leave sabbatical. Both, you can use the term for both of them. The actual title of that is a professional leave of absence, and they have to do 18 credits worth of study to be approved for that through that time period. They actually do a full presentation or a proposal to the district as far as what they're going to take, why they're taking it, and the plan has to be approved prior to them getting approved.
Okay. I think they're great. I wish I could do it. I do have a question. So we pay for their 18 credits, and we pay for them we pay for their salary while they take their 18 credits?
Within 1 year, we'll pay 12 credits. So 12 of those 18 could be paid, and they get 50% of salary during that time period. Whether it's, again, you can take a single semester, which is 9 credits at 50% of that, or 50% for the year at 18 credits.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. All those in favor? All right. Motion passes. Thank you. Now on to curriculum programs. Dr. Katona.
Okay. The only item under curriculum and programs this evening is with regard to the textbooks that are available for review. Again, we'll be seeking board approval on adopting these next month on April 25th. So we have the Wonders Balanced Literacy for the grades K through 5, the Glencoe Algebra 1 textbooks for grades 8 and 9, Algebra 1, and then the 3 books, the Bedford Guide for Writing Tutors, Tutoring Writing, and the St. Martin's Guide to Writing, which are for a new course for next year, the 12th grade English Honors Writing Fellows course.
There is no action this evening, but I will let the board and public know that Dr. Katona will be presenting at the April work session on the work that we're addressing the costs associated with the materials, the implementation process, and the results of the public review of the materials.
I have one quick question on this. I'm sorry I didn't notice this sooner. The Glencoe Algebra 1, will that also be used by the small subset of 7th graders that are taking the Algebra 1 course? Or do the 7th graders use a different text?
This would be for all Algebra 1 students.
Any other questions for Dr. Katona? All right, moving on to policy. Dr. Zerbe.
So this evening, there are some policies for second reading for your approval. They include Policy 207, confidential information, 605, tax levy, 606, tax collection. I just want to stop for a second on that. I think there was a question at the work session about 606 and tax collection. In review of that policy, I believe it is worded correctly. It talks about a third party being able to collect those, and I think the comment by Board Member Hackett was that Berkheimer was a collector. So I think it's in line, the policy is in line. However, your other comment about payment of bills, which was under first reading, we did remove, and we're taking that back to the policy committee. In addition, this evening for your approval is 607 tuition income, 608 bank accounts, 612 purchases not budgeted, 613 cooperative purchasing, and 614 payroll authorization. Before we put that up for a vote, I would ask that we also have first reading policies for your consideration, but not this evening for a vote. However, the searches policy, Policy 226, was a policy that we've been working on as a policy committee, and I know that as a request from the policy committee, we'd like to have our solicitor kind of review that policy with us and take us through that, if you would. So, Mr. Summers, if you could do that for us this evening, we appreciate that.
Certainly, and I'll give sort of a brief overview of the proposed policy revisions, but I'm happy to take any questions you might have sort of as I'm walking through it, or after I kind of go through it. If there are any follow-up questions that you might have, I'm happy to answer them. I think to start out, when Dr. Zerbe and I first had a conversation about our existing policy, one thing that became clear was that it was sort of disproportionately dealt with lockers, and paid a lot of attention to lockers and the search of lockers without necessarily looking at other items within the school that may be subject to search. So as a general overview of why it's necessary to have a search policy, it's important to recognize that the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution prohibits government from engaging in unreasonable searches and seizure. And so the school district, as a governmental entity, is subject to the requirements against and prohibitions against unreasonable searches and seizure by the government. There have been a number of cases throughout the past number of decades that ask the question of, it's clear that police departments, other governmental entities must have warrants in order to conduct searches, must demonstrate probable cause in order to obtain those warrants. So the question is, well, what about schools? What standard do schools have to meet, given the unique relationship that we have in being entrusted with students? Should there be some greater flexibility on the part of a government acting in the role of a school district with regard to our ability to search students? And courts, including the United States Supreme Court, have said yes, there should be some greater flexibility on the part of school districts to be able to search students, while at the same time continuing to provide students with rights against unreasonable searches and seizure. And so essentially the standard that has been developed over time is that individual searches of students must be supported by what is called reasonable suspicion. So the first part of the policy discusses primarily, after it establishes that schools have the authority to conduct searches, the board delegates the responsibility of carrying out those searches to the administration. It establishes what's necessary to search an individual student. And so if there is a student who it is believed that that student has something that is either unlawful, in violation of school district policy, or in some other way prohibited, that the school can conduct a search of that student when there is reasonable suspicion, information that is more than a hunch, but does not necessarily meet the requirements that the police must meet, for example, of having probable cause. The remainder of the policy deals with a little bit more of a complicated issue, which is, when do schools have the authority to conduct general searches? Searches of all students that are not based on individual suspicion that this particular student has some sort of material that is in violation of our rules. And courts, the United States Supreme Court has held that general searches under certain circumstances are permissible. Pennsylvania has also, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has also heard a number of cases involving general searches. And essentially, this policy sets forth and really replicates the holdings of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court primarily, because in a number of cases, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has said that here in Pennsylvania, we actually have a little bit more of a right to privacy than is provided under the United States Constitution. So this policy, which is based largely on recommendations from the Pennsylvania School Boards Association, is certainly tailored to the state of Pennsylvania and really reiterates many of the holdings of Pennsylvania Supreme Court decisions about when we have the authority to conduct searches. So with regard to general searches, it lays out the standards that need to be met in terms of when a general search of the school would be conducted for suspicion of drug paraphernalia, for example. When a general search of the school would be permitted to look for weapons, and there's a Pennsylvania Supreme Court case that deals with what needs to be demonstrated in order for that to happen. It also talks about the ability to conduct searches when students consent to those searches. What happens when law enforcement is involved, which adds a complexity because law enforcement is subject to a stricter standard. So it sets forth clearly what our requirements are if an entity, a law enforcement entity, would like to search a student's belongings. Talks about lockers, which we have in our current policy. Searches involving the removal of clothing or examination beneath clothing, that's really as a result of a particular United States Supreme Court case that was decided a number of years ago and is very narrowly tailored. Obviously, it is kind of at the extreme end of an intrusion into a student's privacy for such a search to be done. And so this policy is designed to ensure that we exercise caution and meet all of the required standards in order for such a search. And then, kind of importantly, it deals with what should happen with material that is discovered during a search. What is our ability to use that as evidence in some sort of disciplinary proceeding? And then, particularly if items are illegal items, what do we do with that particular material? It ends with citations to a number of other policies that we have, and then references some of the court cases that are out there that deal with the ability of schools to search. So I think that this policy that is on for a first reading is a much needed update and is certainly much more comprehensive than the policy that is currently in place. Question?
So as much as I hate to ask it, but it sounds like it's going to become something we have to deal with as a board, the searches involving removal of clothing and examination beneath clothing, it talks about having having persons, two people of the same sex. What if we have a transgender student, and what is the school board's policy, or do we need to write some language in here about who that person or persons, according to the policy, should be?
So in response to your question, I just want to double check the language, but it actually does, the policy reference other staff person of the same gender. So the policy itself does not reference sex as the standard for who would be present, but it does use the terminology of gender. So what was that I think addresses the first part of your question.
I'm not sure if it does or not. So maybe by law it does, but so let's just lay out the hypothetical situation. A naturally born female who now says they're a gender male, would the people in the room, the teachers or whomever, administration, be male?
So I think in response to your question, the presumption that the policy makes is that the staff would be male if a student identifies with the gender of male. However, one point of caution is that the search involving removal of clothing or underneath garments is the type of search that requires an individual review. And in fact, this is, I believe, one of the only searches that specifically references that there will be consultation with the district solicitor, and part of that would be a significant review of all of the circumstances involved with that particular student who is going to be searched. So I think, although it could be implied that the gender of the individuals who would be present would be consistent with the identification of the student, I don't want to say that that's the general, that rule would be applied in every instance. I think that each particular circumstance that would arise would need to be looked at very closely, and those sorts of decisions would be made in that moment.
So it's your opinion that the language appropriately covers it, and Dave, you as the superintendent and your staff would then be comfortable with that?
We will be calling the solicitor when this is a matter.
I mean, it
to
may never
address.
happen.
I'm
It seems
just
like
gonna-
that's becoming the, an area that we've got to cover maybe more meticulously in everything that we do.
Well, certainly, I understand what you're asking. I think that regardless of the basis for your question, this search in and of itself will require much thorough review and consultation with solicitor before such search would be conducted, regardless of what gender identity is being the issue. So I think that if that is the case, and it's a known understanding, and we're aware of it at the time, or we're being made aware of it, we will address that with the solicitor, at that time. But I do think that, you make it's a good question. It's something that, certainly share that question with my administrative team, and as a review, once this is approved, to make sure that everybody's on board with the following of the policy.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick question. Maybe it's not spelled out here, and it's a sister policy, I guess you'd say. What is the responsibility of the district related to the communication to a parent or guardian if a search is?
From a legal perspective, there is no mandated reporting with regard to the law as it applies to searches. There are specific laws under the Safe Schools Act with regard to when reports are made to law enforcement and parents being contacted. And this policy does, I believe, reference our memorandum of understanding with law enforcement. And that memorandum does discuss the requirement of parents to be notified as soon as practicable, I believe, is the standard that our MOU applies. I think as a general rule, any time that a student would be subject to a search, there would be an effort on the part of the school to, as a good practice, to contact the parents, let them know what's going on. Certainly, if something were discovered as part of that search, but even if not.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Summers?
Just a comment. I mean, basically, this gives us more leeway than the cops or the authorities. I mean, they have to have probable cause. We just have to have a suspicion. Suspicion could be easy as one student saying another student that has something that isn't allowed in school. And we can go and search that student without letting the parents of the minor know that it's going to be done. It's, and to sit here and say that the administration would probably let the parents know that they're going to, their son or daughter is going to be searched prior to doing it, I find that unlikely. I wouldn't necessarily think that at the time of the moment, someone may think to make that phone call first.
I don't think,
but
I asked Mr. Summers, I don't think that's what he said.
I was referring to a post-search communication to the parents.
Okay, post-search, so after the search has already been done.
Correct.
So, I mean, it's, I just really have a hard time with, giving the school district more authority than local law enforcement.
If I could reply to that, I think that the policy is not giving the school district any greater authority than it already has. In fact, the policy is designed to ensure that the school district carries out the authority that has been given under law in a responsible way, and that legal standards that have been established by courts, that in carrying out searches that the school already has the ability to do, that we do so in a way that complies with all of the various legal requirements that are out there.
So, but as far as our policy here, we can have in the policy that the parents are informed prior to the search of their student or their child. I mean, they can, if they have a bag they want to search, they can have that bag sitting there until they notify the parents, and if the parents want to show up for seeing it happen, that might be a good thing to have in the policy.
Just to respond, I think that a policy could impose additional procedural requirements. Certainly, I imagine that the administration would have significant concerns about searches being delayed. This policy speaks to threats to the health, safety, and welfare of students, and there may be circumstances, a number of circumstances, where it's important for searching for certain items that may pose an imminent threat to the school environment, and that would certainly be a concern, that kind of procedural step.
As superintendent of the district, I would not recommend that we impose additional requirements on the administration. Certainly, the ability for the school district to do these things is based in a concept called in loco parentis, and which is acting on behalf of parents to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of not only a student but all students. And I think that, as Mr. Summers has indicated, this policy just articulates what is already available for our action under the law.
Maybe what would help me feel a little better about the policy is seeing what the procedures are for the administration, teachers, building principals, on how they would implement that search and seizure, how that would work between the superintendent all the way down to people in the district. As far as the procedures that would be implemented from the policy, because the policy gives you the room to make the procedures to do these things. So I think more importantly, we should be able to see what the procedures and how this stuff would be conducted from the administrative end. So we're not in a situation where we're proactive, the difference between proactive and reactive, doing something before it happens and getting ourselves in a situation versus a reaction to something happening.
I would just like to add, as a member of the policy committee, thank you for all the work that went into this, because we went back and forth. And as an educator, and I cannot go into too many details, but teaching sixth grade, I was never so afraid in all my life as when a student came to me and said, so-and-so has a razor blade. And it was taken care of perfectly by administration, and I went over this policy and through, and this is an example of when the board has to trust and know that all these policies are into place, and I think everybody knows what they are, and it's clearly stated, and it is what it is. And I would suggest that if you had a lot of these questions, that you could come to the policy committee meetings where we sat forever and talked about it.
Well, as far as coming to the policy committee to talk about this, more importantly is the administration, given the clarity that things will be handled properly and that they have a policy that's in place that will give them the tools to make the right decisions. And I would hate to have a situation where we have a policy and there's poor planning, poor administrative handling of a student because we didn't look at that aspect. I think that's even more important to understand how the administration's handling the use of the policy.
Well, I would just like to say that this policy has been in the committee for months. Mike, I don't know, since last summer, I believe? Since June. We, as a committee, have been working through this, and as the chairperson, I've sat there every month, and we have gotten updates on this, and Dr. Zerbe has worked hand in hand with us, and I respectfully, I have to say, it is our job as the board to approve policy and to entrust our administration to enact procedure and to develop a procedure that is reflected in this policy. And at some point, we have to trust that our administration is going to develop the procedures that they need to adhere to the policies that we've set. We can't get into dictating procedure of our schools and our administration. That's not what our function here is.
Also, it should be known that in the policy, it does reference that to my responsibility to, articulate those procedures as well as to have periodic training for my administrative staff on such procedures and the rules associated with conducting searches. So, if you were to pass this policy next month, that would be something that we would instill and move forward with. So I just, this item isn't for your discussion, or I'm sorry, for your vote this evening. So if I could recommend that, this is something that you could read through, and we can bring it up for further discussion in the April meetings.
Yeah, sorry, Chris, one last thing here. As we mentioned, this has been on the policy committee since June. We've gone back and forth. If you actually look at the original policy compared to what we've seen now, basically the entire original policy has been redlined out, and we've come up with some new stuff with, things that were missing. We talked through, there was basically a lot about lockers, and now we've included the personal searches and things of that nature. And we've been going back and forth, especially with the legal language, and I appreciate, Kyle, that you're here this evening, because we were very particular, making sure that everything was properly footnoted with the language that's used. And that was the last concern that the policy committee had. And that was the question to you is, are we now 100% sure that we are properly footnoted with all the court cases that you mentioned, along with our policies that, because this is very specific language, and I just want to make sure that we're 100%, good to move forward with this. That was our last concern.
Sure. So I think just to make an observation about PSBA model policies, which the district's policies are certainly utilized to create our own policies. It is a kind of a general standard that statutes, so specific laws, as well as other policies are referenced in the sort of reference section where it has footnotes to various things. It is not necessarily typical to have references to specific cases. I would say that the sort of major cases in the area of student search are certainly included here. There are dozens of other cases that involve all kinds of sort of variations on issues that could arise in school that we can certainly reference if an issue comes up, and there are tools to search those cases. But I would say that the major concepts established by cases and the major cases in this area are referenced.
Okay, great, thank you. That was definitely a sigh of relief here. Oh, I think Kim's got one more too. Sorry.
I do. I have one question. I'm sorry. It's pertaining to the distinction between possession and ownership, because some of the items that we are entitled to search would not necessarily be owned by students, but could be possessed by students, specifically automobiles and electronic devices. Are we covered in that regard as well?
We are, and we certainly have the ability to, that distinction is not, does not impact our ability to conduct a search.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Some people might be wondering why we're having kind of a detailed discussion around a first reading item, and it's really because we were looking at next month's work session and voting meeting and realizing how packed those are. So we decided to bring this up as a discussion point for this meeting, even though we aren't voting on it. Do you have something?
Yeah, with no other questions, we need your action on the policies for second reading, as I previously mentioned.
So may I have a motion to approve the second reading policies as presented? Any comment on those? Okay. All those in favor? Wonderful. Other items, Dr. Zerby?
Under gifts and donations, accept a gift for $300 from Mrs. Yannick and Miss Mullen for the backpack program at Audubon Elementary School. The second item, accept a gift of $500 from Phoenixville Community Health for the purchasing of materials for a shared table at Methacton High School. The third, accept a gift of a new wrestling mat from Methacton Youth Wrestling Club at Arcola. Value of the gift is $9,000. And the fourth one, accept a gift of the electric bike from Real Random for the Electric Car Club at Methacton High School, a value of the gift $699. Under 13B, there's a list of trips that we reviewed from last week. That includes an update to the request by the board in terms of the cost to the substitutes. Under item C, we approve the commencement date for June 9th at 4 p.m. at Methacton High School graduation class of 2017. Item D, the revised instructional calendar for 16-17. It approved it as attached. Item E, instructional calendar for 2017-18. Please note that per the board's discussion at the work session, I created an option 2. So the option that we spoke at the work session is option 1. The option 2 has a start date after Labor Day, but also ends on Friday, June 8th, as was requested. And those items under number 13 are up for your approval this evening. Any questions?
Okay. First one is, may I have a motion to accept the gifts and donations as presented? Second, any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Now the trips, the list of approved trips. May I have a motion to approve the science fair trip as presented? Second, any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Commencement exercise. May I have a motion to approve the commencement exercise as presented? Second, any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. The revised instructional calendar. So may I have a motion to approve the revised instructional calendar for the 2016-17 and the 2017-18 calendar as presented?
No.
I can't do that.
No. So we're asking for your approval of the 2016-17 calendar. We'll do that, okay?
So, hold on. So we'll stop it right there, right?
Yep.
All right, may I have a motion? This is what happened when I don't have my reading glasses with me. May I have a motion to approve the revised calendar for the 2016-17 school year as presented? Second, any discussion?
Yeah, any comment? Excuse me, Dr. Zerby, I think if I recall, based on a question that came from the audience, that the Act 80 Day on May 30th is to support some of the transition and some of the potential ELA activities for next year. Is that correct?
That's accurate.
Okay, thank you. Any more comment? Yeah.
Is that Act 80 Day for the whole district, or is that, I seem to think that was just K through 6?
I believe it is only K through 6.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comment? All those in favor? Okay. Just to be clear.
So I guess what we would need to do is we need to read it like this: approve the attached instructional calendar for the 2017 school year, and we need to either choose option 1, which is starting after Labor Day, September 5th, and ending Monday, June 11th, or option 2, starting after Labor Day, September 5th, and ending Friday, June 8th.
Motion for either of the other two, 2017. So it'll be option 1.
No. This is so bass-backwards here, okay? You can't just do option 1 and then vote on that and then do option 2, because that's not a discussion. Okay? The way this is done, let's take...
There can be a motion, and then discussion on the motion, and decisions could be made of not proceeding and voting on that motion. There could be a decision to amend the motion.
But it's dumb. I'm sorry. We should have a discussion on these two calendars to find out what the difference is between the two before you vote on them.
In order for discussion to occur, though, there needs to be a motion for something.
Motion second.
Motion to open up
and a second.
discussions of the 2017-18 calendar.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Can I please, all right, fine. What I want to do is find out the differences between the two calendars. As far as I can tell, there's only been one or two changes.
Let me explain the differences. So as per the work session, I was directed to not have school end on a Monday. And so what we did is, if you look at option 1, which is the original calendar that we gave you, the original calendar started after Labor Day and ended on June 11th, which is a Monday. On the second option, it ends on June 8th. So what we did is we moved June 11th to an 80-day on the 7th of November. And then we moved the in-service day from the 7th of November to August 28th. So essentially what we were able to do is we have 4 in-service days as per the contract. So we have the total number of teacher days as per contract. We have the total number of student days as per law, and we have the hours associated with all of that, and we're ending on Friday as requested.
Okay.
In the interest of having discussion so that maybe we can help order the voting accordingly, I definitely have a preference for option 2 because it does prevent us from having that short Monday as the last day of school. And it also gives our teachers 4 in-service days before the start of the school year, which I know our K through 4 teachers in particular are going to need even more so this year.
So we asked Dr. Zerby and the administration to go back and look at it, and they came up with option 2. So I'm fine with leading with option 2 in terms of the voting order. I don't necessarily have a personal preference, since that's the one they came back with. I guess one question for Dr. Zerby, is there a preference from your perspective, or is it pretty much?
Actually, either would work for the administration and the staff.
Okay, thank you.
I will just say real quick, even though it's not really about voting, but I printed out 4 calendars from Montgomery County for the next school year. Now, if I have a little bit of a life, but I am tempted to print out all of them because it's such a bone of contention. But I do recommend that this be more of a discussion between administration or whoever over the summer, because it is incredible. Not any of the 4 calendars are the same, so this must be an issue in every district. And I picked different sizes, different whatever, and I just happened by chance to pick 2 that start before Labor Day, 2 that start after. All 3 end after Methacton does. All 3 have more teacher days than Methacton does. So I do think the reason Herb is so contentious about this is that our calendar has issues. We have an unusual year next year, so let's, like Dr. Zerby said, choose one of these. I don't care about ending on a Friday or a Monday. I preferably need my kids to go to school as long as possible because I have to work. But I will just say that this is an issue and it does need to get addressed, and probably get addressed before March when we're at crunch time and things like that. So I will say that, and I will go with option 2 because it seems to be what more people want. but I think this has to, wherever the bottleneck is, needs to stop. And we need to really address all the Montgomery County calendars and see where our problem is.
Any other comments? All right, well, we'll start with option 2 then, and have that one be the first one. All right, so the motion is, may I have a motion to approve the revised calendar that's attached, which we're calling option 2, where it still starts after Labor Day, but it now ends on Friday, June 8th. May I have a motion for that? Second. Any more discussion related to that? All those in favor? No. You got discussion? No, that's fine. Okay. All those in favor? Okay.
Option 2.
Option 2, where it ends on the Friday, June 8th. Thank you. All right, now on to item 14, which is the board members' calendar dates. Please keep in mind March 28th, the board meeting, which is tonight. April 3rd, Education Committee meeting. The 5th of April, the Policy Committee. The 10th, Property Committee. 12th, Finance Committee. And then we have the workshop on the 18th. And on the 25th, we have the regular board voting meeting. Any old business? Okay. Any new business? Yeah, Jim.
So tonight, for me, for new business, I'll start with it in a form of a motion. And the motion is regarding videotaping executive sessions. And I'll give the points of that. And that would be that the meeting would be videotaped from the time people enter to the time people leave. The videotape would be held by the superintendent solely. It would be held and maintained for 90 days and then destroyed. Board members would be able to review that tape up to 60 days after the meeting. And that is the motion. Now, if someone would like to second that, we can have a discussion on it. I can amend it.
I personally have no comment on that. I respectfully...
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
I think there's some value.
I personally don't have a comment on it without getting guidance from council and legal administration. So as opposed to voting on something like that tonight, I'd recommend it be tabled until they get a chance to review things.
All right, well, let's have the discussion first, and then we'll work through that. The reason why it's in the light of being transparent and also protecting the board. For instance, if somebody was to make claim in the audience that we didn't announce our executive session properly and that we spoke about other things in the executive session other than the 5 items that are allowed under executive sessions, if we were in a position that we had to go to court, we would be able to give the judge the videotape, and he could review the videotape to see that we announced the executive session properly, and it would make our case that we did things right and we talked about things that were allowed to be spoken about in the executive session. So it helps the board in that aspect if we have someone filing a sunshine law violation. It also allows that if, for instance, our executive session last night where you don't have all board members present, that if not all of them are there. They all have an opportunity to see what the executive session was. Now, for instance, you announced last night's executive session, but there was a portion of that executive session that I did not and would not partake in, which was not covered under the 5 items under the Sunshine Law. So that, if I can't make a meeting for executive session, or if the Finance Committee has an executive session on its own, that way other board members will be able to see and hear what the executive session was about, and in all transparency. And the reason why I have made a 90-day limit until it gets destroyed, if somebody wants to file a Sunshine Law violation against the board, they have 30 days to do so. So after 30 days, the board is clear. We're no longer in a position that we would have to present it to a judge to back our side of the case up. But 60 days gives a board member enough time to go and view the video in the superintendent's office. And 90 days is just a day that we can eliminate it that way. And there's a whole slew of reasons why you would want to destroy that and not maintain copies of that after a period of time. So that's where I'm at, and it's for the trust of the public, for us being transparent, announcing our executive sessions properly. It also covers CYA with the board, that if we do announce things properly and we do things announce them, cover certain topics that are under executive session, we do that properly, that is a piece of evidence for the judge to see, and it makes it a real quick decision. We don't spend tons of money on legal fees trying to defend such a case. So that's my side of the discussion. So,
I seconded this based on what I heard from Jim. I wasn't sure about the length of time for the Sunshine Law, but it's apparent that oftentimes, and I missed yesterday's executive session due to a business commitment, it would be beneficial, in my opinion, to be able to, at Doc Dave's office or in the conference room, be able to go in and view an executive session. I certainly don't think that, those sessions should be sent out to board members, but I do think it would be beneficial, especially as we discuss, some meaty topics at executive session to, I got a briefing from Chris today on what happened at last night's session, but, it was a 2.5, 3 hour session, and we spent 10 minutes talking about it. So certainly there was a lot more discussion, kind of get the cliff notes. So for me, it would be beneficial, and I know most of the time we don't have full attendance at our executive sessions. So from my perspective, it would be beneficial to be able to go back and view these sessions and understand the full discussion that went on across the board.
One other comment I'd like to make, and Kyle may know more to this, is the state is already looking at making this a requirement of boards to audio or videotape their meetings, executive session meetings, for this reason.
There have been prior, I think the word of caution would be, you referenced the state. There have been attempts by individual legislators to introduce legislation a number of times to require the videotaping of executive sessions, and those efforts have not passed. I agree with Mr. President's suggestion of having a legal review. There are a number of concerns that come to mind in terms of creating a record that could be used as part of litigation against the district, and that seems problematic. Just having heard your motion. The other item that comes to mind is that the very nature of an executive session is to discuss matters that are confidential, highly confidential to the degree that they are permitted to not be discussed in public, and making a recording of some sort of the confidential discussion certainly creates risks that information would be disclosed in some way. The other note that I would make is that the district does have a policy regarding the conduct of meetings, including executive sessions. My understanding is that a recording is not referenced in the policy. What is being proposed is essentially a revision to the district's policy and how it handles executive sessions. And the board's procedures for handling any sort of policy revision is that in order to become a policy, it needs to be proposed at a meeting and only voted on at a subsequent meeting. So I would indicate that the procedure, regardless of what the board would like to do at this point, even if there were approval of the motion that has been made, that it would be in the form of a proposal that would come before the board at a subsequent meeting for adoption as a policy change.
If I may, I understand the suggestion, and in large measure, I agree with the suggestion. I was there when the subject that was not a sunshine protected issue was sort of raised, and we did not discuss it. But the temptation is always there for something to happen when you're in an executive session, and this would be a way of protecting ourselves, it seems to me, against a false claim, perhaps, that somebody may derive from conversations that they may hear otherwise. So, in general, I'm in agreement with the suggestion. How we proceed with this, of course, whether we go through a policy committee and so forth in order to make this happen, I'm certainly open to that. I do know, however, from time to time, not recently, but from time to time, we have left board meetings to hold an executive session on a particular sensitive issue that was covered by the Sunshine Law. And so from a practical standpoint, it would be difficult to deal with that, and if we were going to do it for everything. I mean, because sometimes we have left here, gone to the place where we hold executive sessions for 5 minutes and come back. And it would be a practical consideration, I think, for that.
I will just add, and Brenda, thank you for saying, nothing nefarious went on. I will say, having sat up in the audience, sometimes you hear these executive sessions and you think, oh, what are they talking about in there? And, having the 9 of us sometimes at those sessions, usually there's 8, but having the 9 of us there has never, ever been a problem at all. Can't hurt to look at a policy to see if PSBA has something like that, but I do want to thank Brenda for saying that absolutely nothing was said at all that was out of the realm. And should I bring up some new business or not yet?
Well, let's finish this out. So
I'll wait.
I would put forth a motion to table this pending legal review and administrative review, and if it's appropriate, then move forward and through the policy.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Any discussion on that?
I'm fine with that.
Okay. All those in favor? Okay. Andrea, you said you had some new business?
I like to bring up the new business to you and Dave prior to new business, so I'll wait for April. Or maybe it'll be on the
Okay.
agenda. Thank you.
Any other new business to bring up? Going once? All right, courtesy of the floor. Anybody? Candy?
Candy Alaba, Igaville. Before you look into starting to change the school policy in executive sessions, you better realize where that policy came from. It came from the lawsuit against the school district, and Kyle's boss settled it. And what was settled became part of school policy. So what's in our settlement agreement is also in the school policy. Now, I understand executive sessions are confidential, and it's sensitive. That's why you have executive sessions. That's why when you come out here, you are required to specify exactly what is, to a point, what has gone on in executive session without giving all the information, because a lot of what you discuss is sensitive. It has to do with contracts or whatever. But I do agree with Jim. If you videotape it, it does give protection to the board. It can be destroyed after a couple days. He's correct. You have 30 days to file an appeal for a sunshine law violation. And previous boards, including this one, has been told in the past that they're not announcing the executive sessions correctly. The board policy is very distinct about it. It's the same in the lawsuit settlement. Unfortunately, the lawsuit cost the taxpayers $80,000 because the previous boards drew out the lawsuit. We filed it because you were in violation, they were in violation of the sunshine laws, and all we asked for was for the law to be, for them to abide by the law. After about 4 years, the board decided, well, we were right and gave us exactly what we asked for. And we asked for no money at all. And one of the agreements, which Mr. Bartle settled, was our agreement will become part of school policy. So be real careful. You don't want to change that, because the school policy is exactly what the sunshine law states. And the sunshine law is maybe 5 pages long. It's one of the shortest laws in the state. So maybe you need to read the sunshine laws, read the school policy. But I think Mr. Phillips is onto something in this day and age, because a lot of people look for small reasons to sue a school district. And if you have it on video for 90 days, it would protect you. And I would hate to see the school district have to waste money on a frivolous lawsuit. But I think this is something Mr. Boardman was right about tabling it. You need to have further discussion on this, not only to protect this board, but transparency on the part of the public, because we do have a right to know when you're planning on spending taxpayer money. My only other question is, Mr. Roth brought up the Arcola Access Road. I don't know what was discussed at the property meeting. I wasn't able to make that. But that is known as Middle School Drive. That is a road. It has been there since they built Arcola. That was a bone of contention when they were discussing building Skyview. And instead of closing all the driveways and putting in new driveways, it was brought up that that road should have been open like it was originally intended for. But unfortunately, the neighbors at the end didn't want school buses riding through their neighborhood, which a lot of other residents in the school district have buses riding through their neighborhoods. So I haven't been back there in a while. The last time I was back there, I think there was a tree starting to grow in the middle of the road. But I think the school district, you should look into maybe cleaning that road up, getting to the end and fix the barrier and have it as an emergency, another emergency route, God forbid, in case anything happened up on the property. But right now it's closed off and it's really a mess at the end of it. So I think you should look in that. But it is known as Middle School Drive. It's been on all the maps since late 60s, early 70s.
Generally, I don't respond, but since I live on 3147 Middle School, second house from the end, and Kim lives on 3149, the house on the end. So recently the cleanup has taken place for the school, and I think the recommendation from the property committee is to open up the gate to allow for increased efficiency out of their transportation. And it would be either a gate or some type of mechanism to allow the buses to go in to get efficiencies out of the busing system. And at least the two of us and the one across the street, nobody is fighting, and none of us were there when I moved in before when I moved in with the family, the road was closed. When Kim moved in, the road was already closed. So just to make sure they understand that we are not those individuals, if that is true, that fought to keep that closed.
Honestly, the road has never been open. They put it in and they never used it. They closed it off for whatever reason.
Anybody else for public comment? Joe?
Joe Bickelman from Audubon. I want to thank you for the explanation of what's going to go on that May 30th day, that Act 80 day. My suggestion would be that the K through 6th graders get a full day of instruction that day, and that the teachers learn the new language arts program on the Monday in June, that 2-hour day. Then the K through 6th graders get an education for the 6 or 7 hours during the day, just like the high school kids and the Skyview kids would get. And then just have the teachers learn the language arts program that Monday in June. I don't see why that couldn't have been done. Then you have a nice instructional day, May 30th. The other item I have has to do with the Finance Committee. I was at the Finance Committee meeting, and the discussion on the 17-18 budget. It was brought to my attention that the preliminary budget included medical cost increase of 5%, when it was known that it was around 1%. So there was like a 4% difference in the number in the budget than what was known at the time. We got the second look, the district got the second look on the medical cost increase, and the actual costs at this point are going up less than 1%. But the next look on the budget is going to include, I believe, a 3% increase in the medical premiums. And I just think that is, you know what you know when you're putting the budget together. If it's less than 1%, don't put 3% in the budget, because it's a couple $100,000. And if it would change, if the final look is 1.5% or 2%, then you show that variance moving forward from that version of the budget to the next version of the budget. But I don't think you should put something in there like 3%, because basically you're budgeting for a couple $100,000 worth of fluff in the budget that it's only going to be 1%. So this was discussed at the Finance Committee meeting, and the decision was to put a 3% increase when the second look is less than 1%. So put the less than 1% in. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mary Hull, Lower Providence. Regarding the school transition, I wanted to ask if we know when principal assignments will be completed. I know that we are planning a meet and greet for the parents that are coming in next week, and I was hoping that would be completed before then.
Before next week?
Before Monday?
Before Monday, okay. At what time on Monday? No, and I don't mean to be comical about this, because it is the administration and my objective to make those announcements as soon as we possibly can, because we know how important that is on a couple fronts. One, for planning with families and planning with the transitions and with home and schools, obviously, but also it's important for our staff. There's going to be some movement, and it's important for the staff to know who those principals are too before they make their selections as part of the reassignment process. So it is important. It's on our agenda. I know our transition coordinator is helping me, do that, working very hard with HR, and we will make that decision as soon as we possibly can. So I will tell you that it's likely not going to be announced before Monday.
Okay.
All right? But it's my goal to get it announced as soon as I possibly can. And once we do announce it, it will be shared with all the home and schools. We have a great communicator in the transition process, and she will get that information out.
Okay. I also wanted to ask, the property committee meetings are held the same time as coordinating council, and I've been unable to attend them. So I wanted to ask about the timeline for the renovations to specifically Arrowhead, because I know when we had the open house, when they asked for input on the districts, that there were Audubon parents that were visibly upset with the configuration of the school and how it appeared. I mean, there are repairs that need to be made, and I was wondering if there's a timeline available that would be made public.
There is not a timeline at this point. The Director of Facilities and our Clerk of the Works group for Davia are working on making that proposal to me, which then will go to the Property Committee likely in April. I believe it's maybe April 10th.
April 10th.
I think that's the date of the meeting.
Okay, so another 2 weeks? Okay, thank you.
Any other public comment? All right, may I have a motion to adjourn? Second? All those in favor? All right, thank you, everybody. Appreciate you coming out.